It all started a couple of weekends ago with a trip up past Baguio, the city in the clouds in the northern mountains of the Philippines. I found a shirt at a roadside stand with a picture of Apo Whang Od, which I wore to the next live stream of the Goldwater. It was then that the idea to travel up into the tiny village of Buscalan, Kalinga, Philippines to get traditional Kalinga tattoos and document our journey was first floated around. Apo Whang is the oldest Mambabatok, traditional Kalinga tattooist. Apo Whang tattooed headhunters and the women of the But village in Buscalan from the age of 15 on. The headhunting tradition, by the way, was alive and well up until the middle 1900s. Originally, tattoos were earned by warriors when they killed the enemies of the village. This was called fi'ing, but laws against such tattoos ended that portion of the tradition for good in 1972. This is similar to the pintadoras who appear in the Boxer Codex from the 1600s, a collection of superstitions of various island cultures which also features some of the earliest illustrations of the Filipino people, including the painted warriors. Whang Od has been proposed to be one of the national artists of the Philippines or one of the national living treasures as of October of last year for her part in keeping an ancient tradition alive. So far, she has thankfully trained 2 apprentices, her grandnieces, Grace Palicas and Ilyang Wigan. Grace, her first apprentice, is now considered a master Mambabatok herself. I got the sun symbol above 5 prayer glyphs because it was my company New Dawn Herbals that kicked off the new life that led me here to the Philippines, and it was prayer and hard work with New Dawn that would eventually propel me to the tiny But village in Buscalan. Whang Od is considered a living legend here in the Philippines. As a result, she's been kept busy for years with tattooing tourists who make the long and somewhat precarious trek to But proper. From Manila, it was about a 16-hour journey. We took the bus to the end of the line in Bontoc. Bontoc, by the way, had a long-standing rivalry against the mountain people of Kalinga many years ago. After around 12 hours on a bus, we had to wait for a jeepney to take us from Bontoc as far as the road would lead us. Conditions, like I'd be operating at 100% efficiency, but life rarely occurs under what you call ideal conditions. So, you know, you roll with it. Yeah, with it. That's what makes it an adventure, right?
Yeah, so we're just like waiting for a jeepney or like a van or trike to get us on the jump off point because the jeepney took off without us.
And the next one's not till 2:30?
Yeah, so we're like stuck and it's just like 10 a.m.
Something like that, not noon yet.
Yeah, so we're waiting. Waiting game strong.
I remember riding the jeepney from the top load. It felt like riding a roller coaster without being strapped in until I found a good grip to hold myself steady. At one point, I was wondering why there were rocks lying in the road, large ones, all in a line. The caution falling rock signs that began appearing shortly after cleared that up. All in all, it was somewhere between an hour or 2 ride, which brought us to the end of the line for any vehicle. From this point on, we followed our guide as we hiked up into the mountains. The whole way up, I was telling myself it was enough just to make it to the village for the experience and to document the trip.
Okay. We're tired.
So,
so we're like
tired, but we're also pretty still.
yeah, I know I smell like ripe as a rose. Ripe as something anyways.
And I think we're like trekking for like 30 minutes now.
Something like that.
Something
at
like
about
that.
a 40-degree incline pretty much. Yeah.
With no water because my bag is with our tour guide.
Not much shade.
And I should have not worn these. Why did I wear these?
The journey was beautiful, seeing the rice terraces of Banawi all the way up through Bontoc and Buscalan were a sight not to be missed, but the hope, of course, was to become tied into the tradition by receiving a traditional tattoo when our journey had met its end. Salvador Amores wrote the book Tapping Ink Tattooing Identities, which is considered to be one of the most comprehensive volumes on the traditional Kalinga tattoo art. And she explains how she decided it wasn't enough just to passively observe the process while doing her anthropological fieldwork in Buscalan. I completely understand her perspective, despite the fact that the process is painful.
Is it painful?
What's that?
Painful?
No, not too bad. Oh, no. The dangerous hike and finally receiving the Watok Sa'awi, a tattoo of the past, was the best way to immerse myself into the experience and into the culture. Salvador Amores brings up the works of anthropologists Van Gennep and Gell, referencing theories on the cultural importance of tattooing in the context of certain rites. The tattoo is a process. There's the wounding, the healing, and then the permanent mark. She brings up the types of rites, the rites of separation that call for the initiate to leave society for a time, the rite of transition, and then finally the rite of incorporation or reunion with society. It's about the process more than the outcome, according to Salvador Amores. Traditionally, tattoos were a sign of cultural identity, akin to the ceremony of receiving a name, another step into personhood. From that standpoint, my choice to receive this cutaneous bodily archive was a rite of transformation. The tattooing process, as I mentioned, is very painful, like being stung by a bee over and over, and about 90 taps per minute. It's the sound of the tapping, tok, 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 that is the etymological source of the name for the tattoo, batok. Residents of Buscalan said that finding the gisi, or tattoo thorn, is becoming more difficult as more and more people take the pilgrimage to the village to take part in the ancient tradition of Kalinga tattooing. The tattoo, among other things, is seen as visible evidence of pain endurance. For me, the pain was transitory. It would come and go.
Second floor. I have to do it again. Yeah, Papa.
She have to do it again. So more ink. She have to do it again. Wow, you're sweating.
The tattoo stands at odds with modernity. Some tattooed Kalinga elders try to hide their tattoos as they venture outside of their native village. There's some judgment in certain circles about tattoos in general, which may go back to the Austronesian taboos regarding pain and bloodletting. Even within the culture of the Kalingas, it is considered taboo to tattoo one's own female relatives. This is why Apo, which means grandmother, Apo Whang Od, had to learn the art from her father without being taught, merely by observing. If you plan on taking the trek to meet Apo Whang to get a tattoo, by the way, a warning, don't come on the weekend as there are too many tourists. Also, be aware at this point, due to failing eyesight, she only does her signature tattoo of 3 dots. The people of Buscalan were warm and friendly. When asked if they would prefer the village to be easier to approach, though, our guide admitted that he was happy with Buscalan being difficult to reach. In emergencies, due to lack of Wi-Fi and cell phone signal, walkie-talkies have to be used, and a bambulance, a homemade stretcher made from bamboo, is employed in case someone is injured. Our guide told us that the previous year, someone had actually died on the trip up to the village. And I'll admit, in between having my sandals sucked down into a rice paddy and slipping on a stone on the way up and nearly sliding off, I believe fully that it would be quite possible for the trip up to end in disaster or tragedy. But that was part of what made the whole experience feel like such a grand initiation. At one point, I lost Diana, her Tita, and Maria, and ended up in a circle with several folks who kept passing me several shots of some local vodka. In between this and the kratom I had taken, I'm sure it made the pain a bit more bearable, but I'm almost surprised the alcohol didn't thin my blood so much as to make me bleed out, as the circle kept passing me drinks despite my mentioning after the second one.
You need to get your tattoo. That's why we're here.
Yep, okay.
Welcome to our house.
We spent the night in the village after getting tattooed. It was only 285 Philippine pesos per person. That comes to about $5.70 US dollars. That and what little we paid for our meals while we were there and the cost of the transportation is all it really took. My tattoo was a large piece, the sun, and 5 small pieces below it, the row of prayers, which came to 1,300 Philippine pesos, or about $26. The cost, however, was paltry compared to the experience. Being raised in the mountains in a rural surrounding where it's not uncommon to hear roosters and chickens throughout the day and see other livestock all around the block, it was a nice change of pace compared to the hustle and bustle of Metro Manila. I'll admit I was actually a bit sad to leave the village and its lack of cell phone signal and Wi-Fi to head back to the daily grind of being hunched in front of a computer screen 10 to 14 hours per day. One thing is certain, the trip was an amazing, near otherworldly adventure that will stick with me for as long as the ink tapped into my right shoulder. Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
Once in my life, in Florida, when I
Yeah?
was a kid, I've not been sunburnt since. Like, I lived in Myrtle Beach and Subcroft.
I like your outfit.
Yeah.
I like your outfit. You look like a hitchhiker.
Well, I've been a hitchhiker in the past.
Yeah. You are?
If I was a
You've been?
driver, I wouldn't pick up that guy. I know that much. Come on, admit it. If you saw this guy on the side of the road,
What happened?
no,